So, ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to interview Dr. Josh Golding, who many of you know, who's a very significant member of our community. He's been part of our community now for probably 3, 4 years at least. We're very honored to have him speak to us twice this coming Shabbos. And as some of you may not know, in addition to being an incredible Bal Koreh and a Bal Tefillah, Josh is a professor of philosophy and has a long and storied career in philosophy. So, Dr. Josh, thank you very much for joining us in general, and particularly this Shabbos. We look forward to hearing from you.
Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be speaking at your wonderful show.
Thank you. And it's better for you being part of it. So, thank you. I guess first question, just so people know some of your history. So, can you give us a brief sketch of your resume? I know you spent some time in Kentucky, which is fascinating to many New Yorkers. To myself, from Memphis, not as much, but to New Yorkers, it's. So, give us some background.
Okay, so briefly, I grew up in Manhattan. I grew up on the Upper West Side. My father was a professor of philosophy who taught at Columbia University and then subsequently moved down to Duke University. But, I grew up in Manhattan. I went to Jewish day schools. I went to Yeshiva University High School in Manhattan. Then I went to Columbia College. I got interested in philosophy pretty early, I guess, as like a teenager, had philosophy in the house, and my father was very encouraging. Also, he warned me about the perils of academic job pursuit. Um, and I went to graduate from Columbia with a major in philosophy. Then I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I spent about 7 years there, worked on my PhD. After I got my PhD, that was in 1982. So, I'm sorry, that was my PhD was in 1989. I taught for a year at Yeshiva University. I taught at Stern. I taught at Hofstra. And then, as often happens with academic jobs, I found a full-time tenure track job in a small college in Louisville, Kentucky, and I took the job. I thought I'd be there for a few years, and then maybe move to back to New York or to Chicago or some bigger metropolitan area where there's more of an Orthodox Jewish life. But as it happened, Baruch Hashem, I met my wife just before I left for Kentucky, and we got married that first year, and we had 5 children, Baruch Hashem. And I ended up staying in Louisville for over 30 years until
Wow.
recently I moved to New York. Um, and I mean, along the way, I did a couple sabbaticals at Hebrew University, at University of Haifa. I did a sabbatical at Notre Dame University. And so right now, this past year, I taught at Stern and I taught at SAR, the high school that's in Riverdale, New York. I moved back partly for family reasons, help take care of my mother, and my next big move is planning to make Aliyah soon with my wife. We have 4 children. All of our children left Louisville, Kentucky. It was a nice, pleasant place, but it was time for us to move on. So we're looking forward to being in Israel and hoping to continue teaching in the so-called gap year programs, such as Oraita, some of you may be familiar with, and continue teaching Jewish philosophy also at a place called Migdal HaTorah, which is in Modi'in. And we're planning to live in Yafo, and so it's going to be a new phase for me. But I'm hoping to continue. I continue writing and teaching Jewish philosophy, Jewish thought.
Amazing. So what was your, I guess, core curriculum in philosophy? Like what did you focus on? What were you known for? What was your area
Right. So my main area really is philosophy of religion, and in particular Jewish philosophy. Some of my writing is sort of a general philosophy of religion. I've always been, I since from early years. I mean, when I was first getting interested in philosophy, I was fascinated by Plato and ancient Greek philosophy, and but as I developed, I became more and more interested in basically the question of rationality and religious commitment. That is to say, is it rational? In what sense is it rational, or maybe it's not rational? To believe in God, a God of a certain sort, And in what sense, if any, is it rational to be committed to a religion such as Judaism? And so I'm very interested in questions about arguments for God's existence, reasons for believing in God's existence. There's the problem of evil, which is, sort of it could be looked at as an argument against God's existence. But also, in general, the question of religious faith. I've also developed in more recent years, I've developed an interest in Kabbalah and trying to understand, trying to articulate ideas from Kabbalah in a rationalistic manner. There's often a sort of assumption out there that Kabbalah is wildly anti-rational, and I think that that's might be true for some Kabbalists, but I think there's a lot of deeply rational and sensible and plausible ideas that one can glean from Kabbalah in order to illuminate what I would call the Jewish spiritual path that are very powerful and very can be very applicable to actual religious practice, and that's leads into what I'm hopefully going to speak about on Shabbos, this
Oh,
coming Shabbos at
fascinating.
the shul.
So, right, so on Shabbos, you're actually slated for two slots. There's the main event, I guess, at Kiddush, and then there's some form of a meditation of sorts at Shalashudas. So if you just give us a sneak peek into what those two will look like, specifically the meditation, I think is something very unique.
Okay, so the meditation in Jewish Kabbalah is, it's an ancient practice. It's talked about in the Zohar. It's talked about in the Kitvei Ari. What I'm going to focus on in the meditation session is there's a particular meditation on the name of Hashem. I believe that I'll try to articulate in the morning session that the name of Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton, as it is sometimes called, represents the Jewish spiritual path. Each letter represents a certain aspect of God. Each letter also represents a certain set of midos or character traits that we are supposed to develop from more basic ones to more elevated ones. The last hey of Hashem's name represents more basic, more sort of simple or straightforward kinds of midos, including thankfulness and humility. And I'll just skip to the top because we're just having the interview. This is just the
Pilot.
teasers, so to speak. So the Yud, the first letter of Hashem's name, represents more advanced levels of the connection with Hashem or with God. The Yud represents dveikut or dveikus, hisbatlus, bonding, self-abnegation. So when the idea is that the four letters of Hashem's name, spelt in reverse order, represent a sort of spiritual ladder from which one grows from more basic things like thankfulness, humility, to achieving some kind of a bond or connection, a deep connection with Hashem. So the meditation is going to also focus on the letters of Hashem's name. All right, we're going to do a kind of meditation on the lower hey, and we're going to think about, contemplate what that represents. And then we're going to move to the Vav, then the Hey, the second Hey of Hashem's name, sometimes called the upper Hey, and then finally the Yud. And then at the tip of the Yud, we go into a kind of silent meditation where we, in some sense, are connecting with the infinite, ineffable essence of God, which is beyond letters and beyond words. So
Fascinating.
some of this might not make so much sense, but hopefully in the lecture in the morning and in the meditation, it will make more sense. I also try to tie it into the Shachrit prayer, which is also, many people don't know this, but it's a very powerful idea, comes straight out of the Zohar, straight out of Kabbalah, that the Shachrit prayer that we say every day has four stages, which correspond to the four letters of Hashem's name in reverse order, working up from the basic blessings of the morning until the pinnacle of Shemona Esrei, which is a silent prayer, powerful prayer, in which we are trying to, in some sense, bond with the infinite being, which God is.
Very, very interesting. Something unique, and I think the sea air hopefully will assist the meditation. It's the right vibe for sure.
I hope so.
What I know you've written, I believe more than one book. How many books have you written?
I've written three books. Um,
And what are they like
so
philosophical books? I
the
know you're working on a novel.
I'm trying to work on a novel. My first book that I published was basically a development of my doctoral dissertation on pragmatic justification for religious commitments. I mean, that would take a little bit time to explain, but that was a philosophical sort of academic work. Um, and then my second book was a philosophical novel called The Conversation, which has characters in it. It has a college student who goes through 4 years. By the way, the 4 years of college also end up corresponding to the four letters of Hashem's name. That you probably won't find in the Zohar. Um,
Everything's Al Pi Kabbalah.
Everything's Al Pi Kabbalah. The four levels of college actually correspond very nicely, and it's interesting to the four stages of the spiritual path. But in any event, the conversation is a novel with many different characters expressing different views, and the main character, a college student, goes through a sort of philosophical journey. Also gets a little bit into Kabbalah, not surprisingly, and learns different perspectives on, what on in what sense is it rational to be committed to Judaism, to God? And then my third book is the one that I'm going to focus on Shabbos. That's called The Way of the Name, which alludes to a famous book by Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Derech Hashem. But on my take, Derech Hashem is the way of the name of Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei is the way. It is the Derech, if you understand it properly, Al Pi Kabbalah. And so that's my third book.
Fascinating, fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Doctor. We're really looking forward. As
I'm
as
looking
y'all
forward
can see,
to.
there's a lot here, and it'll be a very fascinating and hopefully inspirational and meaningful talk and meditation. So thank you
I
so
hope
much for
so.
joining us this Shabbos.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Thank you, Rabbi.
Of course.